Everyone knows Rome, the empire where Caesars led legions and the roads were straighter than the morals of the Senate. But here's the trick. Rome wasn't the only empire that had Europe by the throat. There were others, cooler, richer, stronger. Today, you're going to learn about 5 forgotten empires that could have trampled Rome if history had gone a little differently. Ready? Put on your mental helmet and let's go. There was once a man called Pyrrhus, originally from Epirus. Listen carefully. It's from his name that the expression Pyrrhic victory was derived. You know when you think you've won, but it feels like you've lost? That's him. Facts that will surprise you. Pyrrhus is a cousin of Alexander the Great. And not just a casual acquaintance. He seriously considered himself the second Alexander. In 280 BC, he landed in southern Italy and gave Rome such a beating that the Romans pissed boiling water. The Battle of Heraclea, the Romans are in shock. Then Osculus, again a rout. Pyrrhus had war elephants. For the Romans, it was like a leopard tank suddenly entering the battlefield. But his war cost him too much. There were victories, but the price was inadequate. So he went home, and Rome breathed a sigh of relief. Conclusion: if Pyrrhus had received a little more support from his allies, Greeks, Carthaginians, Rome might not have happened at all. We would have a different protagonist of history. Second, Sarmatian power, the steppe terror of Europe time, 1st century BC, 3rd century AD location. From the Danube to the Don and further into the steppe, the Sarmatians are as if the nomads were the rock stars of antiquity. They wore armor made of scales, rode horseback from the age of 5, and could stab you through with a spear from 50 meters away. Facts: the Sarmatians were not just savages. They were a powerful military machine, with a hierarchy, an elite, and a complex culture. Their cavalry was more elite than the Romans. Even later in the Roman army, there were Sarmatian units hired as elite mercenaries. They had female warriors who inspired the myth of the Amazons. And this is not a fable. It is confirmed by archaeology. Female burials with weapons and traces of wounds. Conclusion: if the Sarmatians had not scattered to different tribes, but united into a full-fledged empire, Europe could speak not Latin, but some Sarmatian dialect with the accent of horsemen. Third, the Bosporan Kingdom was an elite resort with an army time, 5th century BC. 4th century AD, location, Crimea, Black Sea coast, Azov region. Yes, Crimea is not only beaches and eternal dispute. In antiquity, there was an empire here that flourished longer than Rome. Facts: kingdom was Hellenistic. The culture was Greek, the language Greek. But under the bonnet, it was a trading empire with access to grain, fish, slaves, and ships. The emperors of the Bosporus were no losers. The Spartacid dynasty, almost 300 years of power. It's as if one family held control of Europe until the present day. They successfully traded with Rome, fought the Scythians, sometimes even held off the onslaught of nomads. In the 4th century, when Rome was already cracking, the Bosporus was still holding on. Only later it was finished by Goths, Huns, and other flexors of the Great Migration of peoples. Conclusion: it was the European Venice of antiquity. Rich, clever, long, flexible. Too quiet to become legendary, but damn effective. Fourth, Great Moravia, Central European Invisible Empire. Time, 9th century location, Bohemia, Slovakia, Hungary, Poland, parts of Germany, and Ukraine. While the Franks and Byzantines were dividing Europe like an anchovy pizza, a shadow of a new power grew in the northeast, Great Moravia. The name sounds like the name of a sanatorium, but it was a serious empire. Facts. At its zenith, under the hand of Prince Sviatopolk, Great Moravia controlled a territory twice the size of France at the time. Glagolitic and Cyrillic? Greetings from Methodius and Cyril, who came at the invitation of the Moravian prince to make people an alphabet. Without Moravia, there would have been no Russian writing or Old Slavonic. The empire was so dangerous that Charlemagne spent frantic resources to tame this center of power, and often without success. Why forgotten? It collapsed under the onslaught of the Hungarians and internal bickering. No papers were written, no victory columns were erected, but it remained in the DNA of half of Eastern Europe. Conclusion: it was a shadow of Eastern Europe, the first attempt to create an empire uniting Slavs, Christianity, and local culture. Had it lasted longer, the history of the region would have gone very differently. Fifth, Aragonese crown, Spanish chimerical empire. Time, 12th to 15th centuries. Location, Catalonia, Valencia, Sardinia, Sicily, Naples, southern Italy, Greece. Everyone knows Castile and Isabella, but Aragon? That was a real maritime empire. Let's be honest. It was Rome in remix with Spanish guitar and Sicilian daggers. Facts. Aragon controlled vast territories in the Mediterranean, including Sicily and Athens. Yes, the Spanish ruled Greece, temporarily but surely. The Catalan fleet was one of the strongest fleets of the 14th century. Even Muslim emirs and French kings reckoned with it. Trade, diplomacy, military power, culture, everything is on the level. Barcelona was not just a city then, it was the New York of the Knights era. The empire crumbled when it united with Castile into a single Spain, and faded into the shadows as an independent power. Conclusion: if Spain had remained a federation, and Aragon had continued to bend its own way, it is quite possible that the Italian South, Greece, and even parts of North Africa would be Catalan-speaking today. Rome is a brand, a legend, a story that's been drummed into our heads for generations. But the history of Europe is not just about one center of power. It's about dozens of forgotten empires, each with the power to change everything. They were as mighty as Thor's hammer, but dissolved like the morning mist. Here's a reminder that great things don't always last, and that maybe right now we are living in the shadow of some empire that will also be forgotten in 200 years.